Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore a massive, totally paradigm-shifting idea. For the longest time, we've treated climate risk like this distant future environmental warning, just a debate about weather patterns and pollution. But today, we're looking at something entirely different. We are exploring how climate risk has rapidly evolved to become the defining power and security issue of our century. It's really no longer just a scientific debate. It's a fundamental challenge to national continuity, and it is literally shaking up the rules of global power.
Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine a world where governments stop asking, hey, how bad is climate change going to be? And start asking, how on earth do we defend our country from it? What if the next devastating blow to a nation isn't a massive cyber attack, a missile launch, or a border conflict, but rather an unprecedented flood, an extended drought, or a massive crop failure? Think about a recent record-breaking heat wave. Now, instead of just turning up the AC, imagine that heat wave literally grounding military flights or completely buckling major supply highways. These are the kinds of internal, systemic shocks that are powerful enough to destabilize a nation from the inside out. And guys, that's the reality we're stepping into right now. Section 1. A new kind of threat. Redefining national defense. We are actively moving away from that classic 20th century posture and waking up to a stark new reality.
For most of modern history, national security meant defending against human enemies, right? You'd use armies, weapons, spies, alliances. It was a very outward-facing posture. Now, what's really interesting here is how the new reality demands something else entirely. Defending against unpredictable planetary pressure means protecting food systems, water reservoirs, and power grids. The big danger is no longer just coming from another state across the ocean. It's coming from the environment itself, and it's targeting the very infrastructure that allows our modern society to even function. Traditional defense mechanisms just totally fall short here. Unlike an invading army, climate threats absolutely cannot be stopped by diplomatic negotiations, peace treaties, or massive border walls. A flood doesn't ask for a passport. A heat wave isn't going to be intercepted by a state-of-the-art missile defense system. It hits rich and poor countries alike, making it this uniquely pervasive threat multiplier that touches nearly every single aspect of state power.
Section 2. The threat multiplier effect. Or, as the experts call it, the domino cascade. Let's look at how one single, localized environmental event can completely spiral into a nationwide crisis.
Let's move on and see how this builds step by step. Picture this. It starts locally, let's say, a severe flood. That water leads directly to step 2, infrastructure failure. Boom, key roads, bridges, or regional power grids are knocked offline. Because the grid is down, we hit step 3. Supply chains break and vital trade and transport just grind to a halt. Suddenly, a nation can't move goods, they can't import medicine, they can't deliver fuel. And this inevitably triggers step 4, social instability, driven by sudden food or resource shortages. It's this exact cascade that turns a bad weather event into a critical, full-blown national security failure. When we really examine the specific vulnerabilities under pressure, we are looking at the literal foundations of a modern state. Food security is shattered by shrinking harvest and exploding prices. And a hungry population is a stressed population, and stressed populations are incredibly difficult to govern. Water faces depleted reservoirs and heightened cross-border tensions. Then you have energy networks, literally the lifeblood of our hospitals, banking, and communications, being threatened by overloaded grids and damaged substations. These aren't just market commodities. They are the baseline requirements for a state to survive. Water is a national security asset. I'll say it again. Water is a national security asset. A country can survive a lot of pressures, but it absolutely cannot survive without reliable water. Managing storage, conservation, and cross-border sharing, that's no longer just a pet project for environmentalists. It is a critical life-or-death matter of maintaining civic order. Section 3. The internal power struggle and the erosion of public trust. When these foundational systems buckle under repeated climate stress, a nation's internal political stability is put to the ultimate test. So the crucial point is public trust. It's that foundational gut belief that your government actually has the competence to keep you safe. National security isn't just about repelling enemies anymore. It's about reassuring citizens. When a state repeatedly fails to provide basic relief during extreme weather, like when the power stays off for days, insurance becomes completely unaffordable, or emergency aid arrives way too late, citizens fundamentally lose faith in their institutions. The catalysts for this instability are deeply, deeply tied to governance. Think about the chaotic aftermath of a major hurricane or a freak winter freeze. Repeated failures to prepare or super slow emergency relief turn disaster recovery into a highly divisive social issue. Inequality becomes glaringly visible because geographically isolated communities usually take the hardest hit. On top of that, when land gets too dry or flooded, people are forced to move, creating unmanaged migration that puts a massive strain on housing, healthcare, and jobs in new areas. Climate failure damages societal trust in these incredibly slow, painful ways. Because the threats are changing so drastically, the institutions meant to protect us have to change right along with them. Section 4, Rethinking Military Readiness, Fighting Disasters Instead of Wars. Traditionally, military leaders focused heavily on conflict zones, combat training, strategic deterrence, but today, the military reality demands something else entirely. In the U.S. alone, dozens of military installations are actively threatened by rising sea levels right now. Leaders are having to figure out how to relocate multi-billion-dollar naval bases. They have to rethink basic training because extreme heat is making standard exercises way too dangerous. And increasingly, armed forces are being pulled away from their core combat missions just to serve as permanent on-call climate response and disaster relief units. And this brilliantly illustrates a total operational shift that transforms national spending. A 20th century defense budget prioritized tanks, fighter jets, and surveillance. But in the 21st century, true defense spending means investing in massive seawalls, hardened hospitals, resilient power grids, and emergency seed reserves. Spending on climate adaptation isn't just some nice-to-have environmental policy anymore. It is essential, hardcore defense planning. Today, a seawall is quite literally a national shield. Zooming out to the international stage, we arrive at Section 5. Resilience as global power, the new geopolitics. Resilience is the new geopolitical superpower, for sure. In this century, countries that invest heavily in stable agriculture, flexible energy systems, and strong infrastructure are going to project immense confidence and power. Conversely, a country that fails to manage its climate risks will inevitably find itself dependent on other nations for food, energy, water, or emergency aid. And as we all know, dependence fundamentally alters the balance of power. The whole metric for measuring a nation's strength is shifting. Actually, scratch that, it's totally transforming. True national continuity means keeping the hospitals open, keeping the food supply chains moving, keeping the water clean, and ensuring that citizens genuinely believe tomorrow is gonna work. Let's be real, a massive arsenal of weapons means absolutely nothing if the state itself cannot even function under environmental pressure. So, what do the tools of modern power actually look like? Well, they're proactive. It's hardened climate-ready infrastructure, it's early warning systems, and strategic disaster preparation. It's leveraging climate diplomacy, adaptation technology, and international climate finance. A truly secure nation treats climate risk as a massive threat from day one, making the difficult but necessary political choice to spend the money to prepare before a disaster strikes rather than just scrambling to clean up the mess after one. Which leaves us with a pretty heavy final question. Will we prepare before the future becomes a crisis? Climate risk isn't waiting politely in the background anymore. It is already here, actively pressuring our systems and exposing our weaknesses. If we finally expand our definition of security to include resilience just as much as retaliation, we can protect our future. But man, it requires action right now. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and seriously consider what it truly takes to keep a nation safe in a rapidly changing world.